Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's your boy, the Moodster, coming right back at you again, once again. And today we are diving into the explanation of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure Deck, Legends of the Crystal Beast, which the last video I've uploaded was unpacking it and going through it. Now we're jumping into the card details. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump on in. The first one we got is Rainbow Dragon. This card is always treated as an ultimate crystal card. It cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by having 7 crystal beasts cards with different names in the field and or graveyard. This card cannot activate the following effects this turn. It is special summoned. And the quick effects for this card is you can send all crystal beast monsters you control to the grave. This card gains 1,000 attack for each monster sent to the graveyard. You can banish all crystal beast monsters from your graveyard. Shuffle all cards on the field into the deck. The next one we got is a fusion monster. Ultimate Crystal Rainbow Dragon Overdrive. Try saying that 10 times fast. You need 1 Ultimate Crystal monster and 7 Crystal Beast monsters. It must be special summoned from your extra deck during a duel. You can special summon an ultimate crystal monster by banishing the above monsters from your field or graveyard. While 7 or more of your crystal based monsters with different names are banished, this card gains 700 attack. If this card has not battled this turn, which goes into the quick effect, you can tribute this card. Shuffle as many cards on the field as possible into the deck, and if you do, special summon any number of your banished crystal based monsters. The next card we got is Crystal Based Rainbow Dragon. His effect is if this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. You can use each of the following effect of Crystal Based Rainbow Dragon once per turn. When an attack is declared involving a Crystal Based monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can manage this card, treat it as a continuous spell. Special summon 1 level 4 or lower crystal based monster from your deck, but negate its effect, and if you do, add 1 ultimate crystal monster from your hand or from your deck to your hand. The next card we got is Rainbow Bridge of the Heart. During your main phase, you can summon 1 crystal based monster in addition to your normal summon or set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can only use each of the following effects of Rainbow Bridge of the Heart once per turn. During your main phase, you can destroy 1 crystal based card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add 1 crystal spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. If a crystal based card is placed in your spell and trap zone, even during the damage step, you can target 1 card your opponent controls. Return both that card and this card to the hands. Next one we got is Crystal Bond. Add 1 crystal based monster from your deck to your hand, and place 1 crystal based monster with a different name from your deck face up in your spell and trap Zone as a continuous spell. You can only activate one crystal bond per turn. Next one is our next fusion monster, Rainbow Overdragon. You need 7 crystal based monsters to fusion summon him. This card is always treated as an ultimate crystal card. Must be either fusion summon or special summon by attributing one level 10 ultimate crystal monster. Once per turn, you can banish one crystal monster from your graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the banished monsters into the end of the turn. And the quick effect is you can tribute this fusion summon card, shuffle all cards on the field into the deck. The next card we got, besides the tokens here, is Crystal Beast Ruby Carbuncle. When this card is special summoned, you can special summon as many Crystal Beast monster cards as possible from your spell and trap card zones. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face-up on your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Amethyst Cat. This card can attack your opponent directly, but when it uses this effect, any battle damage it inflicts to your opponent is halved. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face-up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Emerald Turquoise. Once per turn, you can target the monster you control. You can target the monster you control that attacks this turn. Change that target to defense position. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face-up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Topaz Tiger. If this card attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 400 attack during the damage step only. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face-up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Amber Mammoth. When another Crystal Beast monster you control is targeted for an attack, you can change the attack target to this card. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, place it in your face-up, or place it face-up in your spell trap card zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Cobalt Eagle. Once per turn, you can target one Crystal Beast card you control. Place that target on top of the deck. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, you can place it face-up in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Crystal Beast Sapphire Pegasus. When this card is summoned, you can place one Crystal Beast monster from your hand, deck, or grave face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell, and like the other Crystal Beast monsters. If this face-up card is destroyed in a monster zone, place it face-up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell instead of sending it to the graveyard. The next one we got is Rainbow Dark Dragon. This card is always treated as an ultimate crystal card. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing 7 dark monsters with different names from your graveyard. You can banish all other dark monsters from your field and grave. This card gains 500 attack for each card banished this way. The next one is Crystal Master. which I forgot to type the card effect. But the pendulum effect is your opponent cannot target ultimate crystal monsters or crystal based cards you control with card effects. And the monster effect, you contribute this card, add one ultimate crystal monster or crystal based monster or crystal spell and trap card from your deck to your hand. Next up is Crystal Keeper. Its pendulum effect is its turn the first time an ultimate crystal monster or crystal base cards you control will be destroyed by card effect. That turn, it is not destroyed. And its monster effect is if a crystal base monster you control batters an opponent's monster during damage calculations, which goes into the quick effect. You contribute this card from your hand or face up on the field. Your battling monster's attack and defense becomes double its original attack and defense during that damage calculation only, but it is destroyed at the end of the damage step. Next up, we got Hammond, Thord, or Struck in Thunder. He cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by sending 3 face-up continuous spells you control to the graveyard. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Well, this card is in face-up defense position. Monsters your opponent controls cannot target monsters for attacks, except for this one. Next up, we got Dimension Shifter. If you have no cards in your graveyard, which goes into the quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Until the end of the next turn, any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Next one, we got Contact C. When your opponent normal or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand to the opponent's field and defense position. This card's controller cannot fusion, synchro, XYZ, or link summon unless they use this card as a material. Next up, we got Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. When a card or effect is activated that includes any of these effects, which will go into the quick effect, you can discard this card, negate that effect. Which, the first one is add a card from the deck to the hand. Number 2, special summon from the deck. Or 3, send a card from the deck to the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring once per turn. The next one we got is Ghost Bella and Haunted Mansion. When a card or effect is activated that includes any of these effects, which goes into the quick effect, you can discard this card, negate the activation, and which is number 1, add a card or cards from the graveyard to the hand, deck, or extra deck. Number 2, special summon a monster card or cards from the graveyard. Or 3, banish a card or cards from the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Ghost Bella and Haunted Mansion once per turn. Next up, we got Awakening of the Crystal Ultimates. Reveal 1 ultimate crystal monster in your hand, then activate one of these effects. If you control an ultimate crystal monster, you can activate 1 or 2 of these effects in sequence instead, and do not have to reveal a monster. The first effect is take 1 Rainbow Bridge card or one Rainbow Refraction from your deck, and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Or number 2, special summon one Crystal Beast monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, or spell and trap some. You can only activate one Awakening of the Crystal Ultimates per turn. Next up is Crystal Aegis. Target one Crystal Beast monster card you control, destroy it. Then special summon one Crystal Beast token with the destroy monster's original type, attribute, level, and attack and defense. If a Crystal Beast card is placed in the spell and trap zone, while this card is in your graveyard, even during the damage step, you can banish this card, special summon one Crystal Beast monster card from your spell and trap zone. You can only use this effect once per turn. The next one is Ancient City Rainbow Ruins. You must have these many Crystal Beast cards in your spell and trap card zone to activate and to resolve these effects. If you have one Crystal Beast, this card cannot be destroyed by card effects. If you have 2, once per turn, including their opponents, you can have the battle damage you take. If you get 3, when a spell or trap card is activated, you can send one Crystal Beast monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. If you have 4, once per turn during your main phase, you can draw 1 card. And if you have all 5, once per turn during your main phase, you can target 1 Crystal Beast card in your spell and trap zone, special summon that target. Next up is Rainbow Bridge. Add 1 crystal spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Next up is Crystal Blessings. Target up to 2 Crystal Beast monsters in your graveyard. Place those targets face up in your spell and trap card zone as continuous spells. Next up is Crystal Beacon. Special summon 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck. You must have 2 or more Crystal Beast cards in your spell and trap card zone to activate and to resolve this effect. Next up is Crystal Abundance. Send 4 Crystal Beast cards from your spell and trap card zone to the graveyard. Send as many cards on the field as possible to the graveyard. Then special summon as many Crystal Beast monsters as possible from your graveyard, up to the number of cards sent from your opponent's field to the graveyard by this card's effects. Next up is Crystal Promise. Target 1 Crystal Beast card in your spell and trap card zone. Special summon that target. Next one is Crystal Tree. Each time a Crystal Beast monster is placed in either player's spell and trap card zone, place 1 crystal counter on this card. You can send this card to the graveyard. Take a number of Crystal Beast monsters from your deck, equal to the number of crystal counters that were on this card, and place them face up in your spell and trap card zone as continuous spells. Next up is Crystal Release. Equip only to a Crystal Beast monster. It gains 800 attack. While this card is sent to the field from the field to the grave, you can place 1 Crystal Beast monster from your deck, face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. Next up is Rare Failure. If you control 2 or more Crystal Beasts cards in your spell and trap card zone, your opponent chooses 1 Crystal Beast card in your spell and trap card zone. You can send it to the graveyard, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. Next one is Rainbow Refraction. If a monster you control whose original name is Rainbow Dragon or Rainbow Dark Dragon activates its effect this turn, special summon any number of Crystal Beast monsters with different names from your deck. Next one is Advanced Dark. All crystal based monsters in the field and in the graveyard become dark. If an ultimate crystal monster attacks, negate the effects of the attack target during that battle phase. During damage calculation, if a crystal based monster you control battles and you will take damage, you can send one crystal based monster from your deck to the graveyard. You take no battle damage from that battle. The next one we got is the Melody of Awakening Dragon. Discard one card, add up to 2 dragon monsters with 3,000 or more attack and 2,500 or less defense from your deck to your hand. Next up we got Foolish Burial Goods. Send one spell or trap card from your deck to the grave. You can activate one Foolish Burial Goods per turn. Next we got Cosmic Cyclone. Pay 1,000 life points, can target one spell or trap card on the field and banish it. Next up we got Crystal Boon. Special summon up to 2 crystal based monster cards from your spell and trap card zone, and if you do, gain life points equal to their combined original attack. If a crystal based card is placed in your spell and trap card zone, well, this card is in your graveyard. Even during the damage step, you can banish this card, activate the top cards of your deck, and if it's a crystal based monster, either add it to your hand or special summon it. Otherwise, send that card to the graveyard. You can only use the effect of Crystal Boon once per turn. Next up is Crystal Miracle. When a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated, destroy one crystal based card you control, and if you do, negate that activation, and if you do that, destroy that card. If a crystal based card is placed in your spell and trap card zone while this card is in your graveyard, even during the damage step, you can banish this card, place one crystal based monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell. You can only use this effect of Crystal Miracle once per turn. Next up is Crystal Brilliance. You can only control one Crystal Brilliance. Each crystal based monster you control gains attack equal to its original defense. If a crystal based card placed in your spell and trap card zone, even during the damage step, you can send this face out card to the graveyard. Special summon one crystal based monster from your hand or graveyard. Also, any damage you take this turn is halved. Next up is Crystal Pair. When a crystal based monster you control is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, place one crystal based monster from your deck face up in your spell and trap card zone as a continuous spell, and if you do, you take no battle damage for the rest of this turn. Next up is Crystal Conclave. Once per turn, if a face up crystal based monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one crystal based monster from your deck. You can send this face up card from the field to the graveyard, then target one crystal based card you control and one card on the field. Return them to the hand. You can activate these card effects on the same chain. Next up is Ultimate Crystal Magic. When your crystal based monster is destroyed by battle, you can send 7 crystal based cards with different names from your hand, deck, or face up on the field to the graveyard. Special summon one Ultimate Crystal Fusion monster from your action deck. This is treated as a fusion summon. If a face up Ultimate Crystal monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, You can banish this card from the graveyard. Place any number of crystal beasts from your graveyard face up in the spell and trap card zone as continuous spells. Next up is Counter Gem. Send all cards in your spell and trap card zone to the graveyard. Place as many crystal beast monsters as possible from your graveyard face up in your spell and trap card zone as continuous spells. During the end phase of this turn, destroy all crystal beast cards you control. Next up is Fury Flames. If the combined attack of all face-up monsters you control it is higher than your life points, make your opponent shuffle all face-up monsters they control into the decks, which will be their choice, except monsters with 0 attack power, so that the combined attack of the remaining monsters they control becomes less than or equal to your life points. And the next one, and the last one is Matter First. Take one field spell from your deck and either activate it or add it to your hand. So that is the Legend of the Crystal Beast structure deck card explanation. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the next episode of a deck explanation. But with that being said, I will see you guys then, because we're Audi 5 bajillion. Bye.